I have been doing this work of advocating for and designing policies to address inequality, to expand the routes to the middle class for people who are struggling, and to make sure that there are more people whose voices are heard in our democracy for 2 decades now. And as a big part of that work, particularly in the past decade, I've gone on TV and done media and radio and podcasts to try to just build public will for basic policies around economic opportunity, whether they're investments in home ownership or raising the minimum wage or investments in infrastructure and research and development. These are the kinds of things that I go on TV to talk about. But in 2016, in August, I was on a show called Washington Journal on C-SPAN. I would say raise your hand if you watch that show, but yeah. So it's basically like a radio call-in show. There's not, there's no bells and whistles, and there's no interesting sets or charts and graphs or people zooming in from various places. It's just basically the host who doesn't say very much, and then the guest, and the guest gets calls from all over the country, and you answer them live on TV. So basically, it sort of looks like this, And about halfway through my appearance, I got a call from someone who identified himself as Gary from North Carolina. And Gary came on the line and he said, "I'm a white male and I'm prejudiced." And granted, this is live television, right? And it's just basically a close-up shot on my face. So I just had to sort of listen. What is about to happen? And then he went on to explain sort of why he was prejudiced, his fears about gangs and drugs and crime and, Black men in the inner city. I'm just listening and listening. And then he says, "But I want to change. And I want to know what your guest, me, can do, can say to help me be a better American," in his words. Again, live television. So I answered just, off the top of my head and from my heart. And I said, "Thank you. Thank you for admitting your prejudice, because it's one of the most powerful things and an important first step that we can do." And then totally off the top of my head, because again, this is not the work that I was doing at the time, I said, these are some things you can do to basically integrate your life and to sort of cleanse your palate of the stereotypes that you are getting, often from the local news media, which we know overrepresents crime, Black people as criminals, and underrepresents white crime. White people are majority of people who commit crimes and are arrested for crimes, even though there are disparities. And you can read of African American history. You can basically, this is what you might want to do to sort of change your outlook. And the exchange between us, the clip of that exchange went viral. It's been seen on various platforms about 20 million times. And it sort of will have these moments again over the past few years. And what's interesting to many people about it is that Gary and I ended up getting in touch with each other. And getting to know each other, meeting in person a couple of times. He actually just texted me this weekend. And he's been on a journey to become, in his words, a better American. And what my relationship with Gary has really taught me is that, the story of, what I term the hierarchy of human value, right? The idea that some groups of people are worth more than others, are better than others. That story is a very old one. That story is one that was created, in the 17th century, and particularly took root in the United States because it justified our economic system, which was to steal land and to steal labor. And so we really had to dehumanize people of color in order to make that compatible with our stated values of equality and freedom. That story is old, but it's still ginned up and sold and repackaged on a daily basis. And so I think people of good faith and values need to ask themselves, whose story am I going to believe? And where in my consciousness have I sort of, absorbed some of that story that would make me feel like the disparities that we see in our society are maybe not about structures and systems, but are actually about just, some differences in culture and effort, and why can't they get it together? And, my ancestors, I'm talking as a white person here, my ancestors were able to, come to this country with nothing, and look where we are now. Why are Black people still in this place? And why are immigrants today breaking the law? We came here legally, right? These are questions that people have, that there are real structural answers to. And I really do, though, create, for me, it's very important to remember that this story of blaming people at the bottom of the social hierarchy for their condition is a very old one. And we can just choose not to believe it, and look for answers that reaffirm the equality of all humanity.